Welcome to the OK Book Club, where we dive into books, stories, people, and tons of different topics. And today's episode is on how to write a great story. Yes, I've said it multiple times in this podcast. Why read someone else's writing when they can read your writing? So whether you're 8 or 88, it's never too early. It's never too late. Let's write a story. We as human beings are wired to love stories. So much of how we can remember tons of different topics comes through the avenue of stories, listening to stories. And I will tell you this, more than anything else, whether you're experiencing it as a writer or whether you're experiencing it as a reader, stories can change your life. Stories can be so memorable. And why, again, leave that to someone else? So you write a story. And especially for my younger listeners here, adults, as you know, kids love to write stories from an early age, and they love to be able to tell stories. But somehow, some way, for some reason, as we get older, we stop telling stories. We stop writing stories. So everyone, whether you're young or old, it's a skill set. Being able to communicate well. We all know people in our lives that can tell a quick, wonderful, funny, emotional story in less than a minute or two. And I know a lot of us have always thought this in their head, but never had a way to do it. Well, like I said, you can learn how to tell a story. If you can tell a story, you can write a story. So, friends, we will take a big view. This particular episode will be a big view of the elements that go into a great story, and then future episodes will dive into each particular element, and we'll wrap up the podcast with the top 10 ways to write a great story. A little background before we begin, again, to reinforce why being able to tell and write a great story is so important. When I started, almost 20 years now, we had a professional development day, and it was about how to teach kids how to write. Early in my career, like I said, and I just put my hand up in the air and I said, I don't get it. Why are we spending all this time teaching kids how to write a story? At that point, I had been in the big, bad, real world, trying to survive from day to day as a salesman, and I just kept thinking, as an adult, you're going to work every day. Of course you're reading, right? And of course you're putting together some presentations, but whether you're a builder, architect, engineer, programmer, cook, I don't know, anything, bond analyst, just waiting tables, right? What are we doing? We're not telling stories. We're not writing stories. And I'll never forget it, where I was actually in the room, standing up in the back, and the presenter just put me in my place as a rookie teacher. Right? But it wasn't about being a teacher. It was about what is common knowledge that we don't think about. Any type of presentation that you're putting together, anything you're reading, whether it's a profile on a person, whether it's an opinion type of essay, an op-ed, whether it's the most detailed scientific paragraph or paper that you need to read to get information from, for you to be interested, for you to be captivated, for you to actually be able to stay with any piece of reading that you're doing, as a writer, you've got to grab the reader. You've got to make it interesting. You've got to have sentences that jump off the page that you want to keep reading. So whether that's a great lead by introducing you to the topic, to make you want to continue read, it's all about weaving in some type of narrative. Whether it's one sentence or a whole paragraph, stories We are wired again. Our brains are wired to follow stories. And that's why telling stories, writing stories is so important. So let's get started. What makes a great story? First off, I have to tell you this. Whether, again, you're 8 or 88, it's got to be simple. It's got to be easy. And that's how I present it. Teaching second graders now for, almost 15 years. This is how I present it, and they take off with it. So, first is something that we call description. Being able to describe a scene so that the reader feels like they're right there. If the reader closes their eyes, they know exactly what you're relaying in your story. So how do we do that? Through our 5 senses. How do we put that in a story? Just start your sentences with I could see, I could feel, I could hear, I could taste, I could smell. It's that easy. And this is where I'm going to go with a lot of this. Just start your sentences with certain words to put in all these elements. Number 2, details. This is not about starting your sentences with a certain few words, but this is about, especially when you go back, you can have a particular noun, like a common noun, have it be a proper noun, right? You didn't go to the store, you went to Target. It's not a soda, it's a can of Pepsi. It's not our yard, it's our backyard. It's not a boy, it's Billy. You get the idea. There's so many places you can go. And along with the description, it's the moment-to-moment description. You didn't walk into the room. I walked down the stairs, turned left, and sat down at the kitchen table. It's so simple. Details, details, details. And the one, I'll go back to it again, that I constantly remind my students, it's not a soda, it's a can of Pepsi. Next, it's action. This is what I refer to as action. This is moving your story along. And how do we do this? Just start your sentences with suddenly. Start your sentences with all of a sudden. There's lots we can go through on this, but again, I'll leave that to a future episode. But just know that the reader wants to be entertained. The reader wants to have some suspense. They want to be on their edge of their chair. And for you to be able to do that, it's really simple. Start your sentences with suddenly. Next, I refer to this as thinking. Internal thoughts. For the reader to be interested in your story, we have to be rooting for the main character. We have to be rooting for you if you're relaying a story as if it's a personal narrative. So how do you do that? You start your sentences with I was thinking. As the reader, we care. We are rooting for you. We want to know what you're thinking. Because if it's just action, one after another, the reader, I'm sorry, we don't care. It's too much. If all you're doing is describing a scene, I'm going to fall asleep pretty quickly. So weaving each of these elements through your story is very effective. And as we go along, I will say this too, to make it clear that your story is off to a great start as you go along. When you finish, each particular element will have its own color, and I have the children underline. For example, description is red. I have them underline action, suddenly, is blue. I'll have them underline internal thoughts, thinking, as green. You can use any system you want, but what you'll see is if you have all these elements in your story, you will have lots of different colors in your story, and that's how you know that your story is on its way. It's a great story. So as you're going along, see if you've got every color in there. If you finish, oh my goodness, there's no green in here. I got to start a sentence with I was thinking somewhere. And one more point on this, because these 3 elements are the foundation of a great story. Weaving them back and forth, the action, the thinking, the description, whatever order, they've got to be weaved through your story. So a simple example would be, I could see the goal ahead of me. I'm thinking, am I finally going to put it in the back of the net? Suddenly, The defender was on me. I moved left, I moved right, and I was down. I mean, that was just a quick example off the top of my head, but you could see what I just did. I started 3 different sentences with I could see, suddenly, and I was thinking. Next, this goes along with these foundations. Write what you know. You will be a lot more effective in terms of being detailed because you know your topic, and that will come through for your reader. Plus, you'll be more interested and motivated to write about what you know, what you love. So if you play soccer, write a story about playing soccer. You're a gymnast, go through one of those great moves that you made on the floor. You get the idea. And to back up for a second, I don't think I ever talked about this. Originally, when you start writing, we're talking about short stories. We're talking about 3 to 4 pages tops, beginning, middle, ends. We're going to talk about, obviously, when you write stories, it can be tons of different genres. It could be fantasy, you name it, horror, realistic fiction. But here, you're not making up characters. This is important for me to stress. Initially, when you're practicing your craft here, it's about writing something that happened to you. So this particular type of story is actually called a personal narrative. This is the best place to start, like I said, and then you can venture out into doing any type of different narrative story that you want, but you write what you know, you write something that happened to you, and that's called a personal narrative. A final point about what you're actually writing as well. Have your title be short and sweet. Have it be somewhat mysterious. You don't want to give away exactly what your whole story is about in the title, The Day I Went to the Beach. If you write that as your title, the reader's going to know everything about what you're going to write about. And regarding that, you want to stick to one particular moment to have it be impactful so the reader can focus in on that moment. Because, again, if you write about the day at the beach, whether you're 8 or 88, I'm telling you, we're going to know exactly what the story is. I did this, I did this, I did this. And definitely future episodes will be on certain words that are banned, right? Early on, the word then at the beginning of a sentence for too many young writers, then I did this, then I did this, then I did this. That word is banned at the beginning of a sentence. It's funny. And developmentally, it's understandable, but it's so easy to correct. Next, we call this talking out loud, which is dialogue. You've got to have people saying something out loud. For example, I had just finished eating my granola bar, and that's when I heard it. Kevin, what, Mom? Come up here right now. Why? Because I need you. And this can be very difficult for especially the earlier ages to be able to effectively put dialogue in their stories. You need to indent dialogue. When someone else is talking, you need to go to the next line. But the basics, you've got to have that included in your stories. Next, figurative language. And I would argue this is going to be the most effective part of some of your stories, and it's simple for the kids to be able to master. The first one I teach is metaphors. Metaphors are comparisons. Along with this, you could teach similes. But the bottom line, give me a great metaphor where you have a feeling in your story. The next sentence, start it with, it was as if. Or start it with, let's just say. For example, I sat down at the table. I couldn't get these bad thoughts out of my head. I was definitely melancholy. It was as if a dark rain cloud kept following me all day long, period. Another example. I was so happy. Let's just say it was like my birthday all over again. Can you see how simple this is? It's so effective, and all you have to do is start your sentences with those 2 phrases, right? So as we get into more figurative language, definitely future episodes, but whether it's a simile, whether it's hyperbole, whether it's rhyming, idioms, metaphors, like I mentioned, personification, alliteration, onomatopoeia, there's so many ways of spicing up your writing. And we use purple for figurative language. What sentence can I have jump off the page? Start one of those sentences with, let's just say, or it was as if. That's the first example of figurative language that I'll teach my students, and it's so effective. 3 more elements that go into a great story. 1, repeating words. Repeating words can be bad repeating words or good repeating words. What are bad repeating words? This is about making sure that you don't repeat the same words over and over in a story, and they're so simple for young children to pick out. It's not obvious, even for adults. You'll just end up going back and rereading your story, and you just realize, wait a minute, I just said Billy in almost every other sentence. I remember when this first clicked as something very simple to help students with. One particular student ended up saying water bottle like almost in every sentence. It was such a great story, but hello, right? So that's more about making a story better. But the effective one is the good repeating words, stressing something, saying the same words, saying similar words so you can make your story emotional, have it come alive. I was happy. I was ecstatic. I was out of my mind. I was so worried. I was petrified. I couldn't get the thoughts out of my head. Those are examples of good repeating words. Next is having a great lead. The beginning of your story. You've got to grab the reader. Whether you're young or old, if you're going to bore me in the beginning, I'm not going to want to continue. This could be tough to do, but it doesn't have to be. If you give, in this case for my students, specific strategies, this is what I say all the time, and they're off to the races, every single one. Number 1, you got to indent, right? You've got to be able to have paragraphs, and again, that'll be something extra. You could do a whole episode on how to effectively write paragraphs in your stories. But start off, that first word has got to be indented. Give me a time, give me a place, give me a feeling, and then write one sentence that's going to grab the reader. For example, it was a hot July morning around 9 a.m. and I was laying in my bed, bored out of my mind. I walked downstairs, sat down at the kitchen table, thinking again, what am I going to do today? And that's when I looked out into the backyard. I didn't know it then, but my life would change forever. Again, it could make it fun. Another example off the top of my head. It was Friday night around 6 p.m. in late September. It started getting dark already, and we headed out to the car to go to our fall baseball game. I shouldn't have left the house. Dun, dun, dun. And again, we'll make it fun with the kids. But what have you done here? What makes this a great lead? What makes it a great beginning? There's some suspense. You want to keep reading. You're hooked. As a writer, I've got the reader. And finally, it's the ending. End with a bang. That's what I always tell my students. Write something that's emotional, different, original, funny, creative. Just something that makes the reader say, wow. And listen, of all my lessons, this is not something that's going to be easy, but I will say it's the most enjoyable. And adults, we know this. Authors, the best on the planet, they'll spend weeks, they'll spend years trying to come up with that great last sentence. But you know it when you see it. It's just so impactful, so emotional. And as a reader, you're so happy that you went through the whole process of reading a particular story. And as a writer, there's nothing more satisfying than coming up with that perfect last line. And again, it's not easy, but how do I teach this? How can you write effectively that great last line? Practice. Reading great examples of great endings, right? Playing with it. And I will tell you this. I had one student, I knew he was coming up at the end of the book, and I knew the last sentence was so amazing. I was sitting with another student across the room, and I said, watch this. He's about to read the last sentence in his story. And it's one of the best moments in all my years of teaching. What happened? He read this line and he actually sat there and he took the book and he hugged it. It was just so amazing. I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. That's the power of writing. That's the power of stories. Don't read someone else's story. Write one yourself. So before we wrap up our episode, one particular topic I haven't discussed, which goes without saying, you've got to have punctuation, you've got to have proper grammar, you've got to be able to spell correctly. You learn this up front as soon as you start writing, and you're never going to master this. But as you go through writing, you're always going to practice that craft. So, to wrap up our podcast, the top 10 elements that go into a great story. Number 10, as I just mentioned, you've got to have proper punctuation and grammar. Number 9, write what you know. Number 8, weave through your story the basics. Description, action, internal thoughts. Number 7, dialogue, talking out loud. Number 6, repeating words, good repeating words, and get rid of those bad repeating words. Number 5, action. You've got to have your stories move so we can be excited about continuing to read. Number 4, description and details. They go together. They make your stories just so much more authentic and real. Number 3, your lead, your beginning. If you're not interested in your first paragraph, you're not going to be interested in the rest of the story. Grab me up front so I want to continue reading. Number 2, the ending. Ending with a bang. If you're going to remember any particular piece of writing, those last few sentences are the most important. And yes, number 1, figurative language, primarily the metaphor. Making your stories come alive, making the sentences jump off the page, having your writing sizzle. Why did I pick this number 1? As a writer, it makes the process so much more fun. It's hard, granted, but when you come up with that great line, you just want to celebrate it. You're so excited. And isn't that the toughest part of being a writer? You're sitting there, you got a blank page in front of you, and really, even the best writers out there, it's tough. It's tough to get started, but once you get going, once you put that great line on a piece of paper, once you finished up, the satisfaction is just absolutely fantastic. And who benefits? The reader. Like I said, this just makes the whole process of being a writer so much fun because you will be creative. You will come up with that great line. Future episodes, I'll dive into more of what figurative language is all about. But I appreciate you staying with me. How to write a great story. Reach out to me at kevmok21@gmail.com. If I forgot anything that you enjoyed here listening to this episode, any feedback, and of course, always appreciate any 5-star ratings you can give me on Apple Podcasts. Until next time, have fun and keep learning.